this year has been really fascinating to watch Joel Embiid. It starts off feeling like, well, Embiid's washed. That's what it felt like watching him. And then he has a surge and he feels amazing. He's back, and Tyrese Maxey is an all-NBA talent, and they have young guys and VJ Edgecombe looking great and good role players. The Sixers are still only the 6th seed right now. And one of the questions on my mind is Joel Embiid going to make the finish line this year? Is he going to stay healthy for the remainder of the season? I hope he does. I know you hope he does. You've worked with him since prior to the draft. I'm curious about your general thoughts on the state of the Sixers. They ducked the tax prior to the deadline. They traded Jared McCain and Eric Gordon. They got under. Disappointing in my eyes. Joel Embiid publicly said he hopes they don't duck the tax. They did. What do you think about the state of the team, and what are your expectations for the Sixers the remainder of the year?
Well, I mean, obviously I work with Joel and Kelly and Tyrese, so I have high expectations for him. I think the thing with the Sixers has always been the same, is Joel going to be healthy in the playoffs? You know, I told people that when he won his MVP award, afterwards, he literally was like thrilled, you know, that he finally, you know, got what he thought could have had, you know, before if injuries hadn't kind of ended some of his other chances at winning that. And he just turned to me and was like, you know, I would honestly trade this MVP just for one healthy postseason run. And I was like, wait, you're not saying you would trade this for a championship? He's like, well, obviously I would trade for a championship. He's like, I would trade my MVP for one healthy postseason run, because I think that if I'm healthy, I'm dominant enough that I would carry us to win a championship. He hasn't had that. And so, you know, I haven't shared this story publicly, but Joel's kind of hinted at it a little bit. People didn't realize, so the Olympics happens. Obviously, people know that he was, you know, kind of dragging himself through the Olympics, but it was a chance for him to actually win. You know, he won a gold medal. Of course, they were a loaded team, but they don't win that gold medal without him in the Serbia game, you know? So he has a great game, really. And the rest of the time, it was just kind of him, you know, being a part of a really good team. And he wins a gold medal. After that, all the way until this season, mid-season, I think it was like December 10th, we didn't work out one time. This is a guy that I've worked out more times than anybody else because he is obsessed with basketball. He still watches film every single day, still watches all the other games, still knows what's going on. He's watching random league pass games, the tanking games that you're talking about. He's watching those games. He'll be like, oh, there was a great side out of bounds play at this time. And I'm like, you're not watching those two teams that are both trying to lose right now. He's obsessed with basketball. But he couldn't work out because he was like, you know what? I have to get my health right. So he went, I don't know how many months that is, but over a year without one skill workout. Then he has to ramp up in preseason. In preseason, it's not like he's practicing all the time. They're still trying to get the knee health right. Then he's, you know, sprinkling in practices, and ultimately he's getting in shape using games to get in shape. So he struggles. He was awful the first night of the season. And then he was struggling the first, you know, month of the season.
Wasn't even rebounding.
He wasn't doing anything, but he was trying to get back in shape using basketball games, NBA games to get back in shape because he wasn't able to work out. He wasn't able to practice. And I remember at one point he was like, hey, I know I'm not really supposed to, but like, he's like, come up, we got to figure out my jump shot. My mid-range is off, which is never off. My three is off, which is never off. And so we did one workout. And we like grinded, like old school Joel, like hour and a half, should not have probably done it. But it was like, we got back in the lab and he's like, I feel like myself again. And the next game he had 39. And since then he's averaging like 30. That's how good he is. First off, it took one workout. He figured one thing, he was doing a little thing off with the pickup, but he's like, I just need to feel like myself again.
What do you mean by that? Can you describe that about something that he's doing
wrong? So basically, when he was picking up the ball, he's picking up the ball off center. So like when he was dribbling, if he's dribbling on the left, he's picking up on the left side. If he's picking on the right, so it created like a circle motion. When he's catching his threes, he was circle motion instead of like stuffing the ball in his pocket, like in his mid frame, so that he could, you know, use his pretty form that he has. And so he was like, what am I doing? I'm like, when I'm dribbling, I feel like my dribble's off, my pickup is off. And he's like, as long as I secure the ball well, I know I can make the shot. But the ball feels like it's sliding on me almost, because he was circling the ball and his hand was sliding on the ball. And so we did a couple of drills and it was trial and error though. And I was like, hey, this is what you do when you're best. We're looking at old footage. And once he got it, I'm talking about one shot. He goes, that's it. That's how good he is. Yeah. Then he has 39 and he's averaging like 30 since then. He's been his dominant self. But a lot of that is he figured out the shot, which helped out. But then he also got in shape. He needed to get in shape through playing basketball. And so I don't think people realize, like, people will look at him sometimes and be like, he's out of shape, he's lazy. I'm like, you don't go from picking up a basketball the first time at 16 years old to being arguably the most skilled big guy of all time in a decade if you don't work hard. That's the first thing. You don't go from, go from not playing basketball, go watch his JV film where he catches the ball and jumps out of bounds and throws it backwards at Mount Verde.
That's a classic.
To now being, a guy that, it doesn't matter if he's moving the same way he is. He's a 30 every single night with double teams and with teams trying to stop him without working hard. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever worked with. It's just his body physically isn't allowing him to do the things. And so, there was a recent article that came out where he said a quote, which I loved. And he was like, it wasn't that I couldn't do it was like my body wasn't physically allowing me to do the things I know I was capable of. That was the most frustrating part. It was like we were doing all these trial and error things as far as like, okay, do we do more rehab or more strength training? We don't know. Do we do more cardio or less cardio? We don't know. Like they were doing all these different things, and props to, Simon from the Sixers team and all the medical people that have kind of come together to find this perfect balance of weightlifting and therapy and the amount of of cardio. But I do think that that's the one thing that fans don't understand is they don't understand, the lack of better terms, the process that he had to go through just to get back there out on the court. And as frustrating as it was for Sixers fans, it was more frustrating for Joel because he's like, I know I still can play at this level. I believe I can. I have the skills to play at this level. It's just my body's not physically allowing me to play at that level. And so now it's a really good thing that he's back there on the court. And I think that he's bought into something this year that he's never done in the past. In the past, if he was 50%, he was still playing. He was a warrior. He was a competitor. He was like, if I can play physically, I'm going to play. So then he arrived at the playoffs banged up. This year, he's taken more of an approach of, if I'm not healthy, I'm not playing. And so it's a different approach. And
rested the most recent games ahead of the
it's one of those things where people panic. They're like, Joel Embiid's out, and they're like texting me, and he's like, oh no, is he seriously hurt? I'm like, no, he's just not 100%, and so he's not going to push his body to a place where he has in the past. And in the past, people have no idea. People know all the surgeries. People know all the injuries. People have no idea the amount of pain that he's played through just to try to give his team a chance to win. And even in the playoffs.
Well, that's the nice thing now is you have more support with a Tyrese Maxey emerging into an
100%.
Absolute star. VJ Edgecombe can step up and have big nights. There's more support around him now.
100%. And
Paul George is still good as well.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think that's the biggest difference is this year, the hope is instead of trying every single night, because you even look at you talked about plus minus earlier with the Celtics. You still look at Joel's plus minus. It is crazy different.
Yeah, it is.
And people we talked about this last time I was on the podcast when I'm like, go look at some of the best players that you say are really playoff risers. Go look at their on-off numbers and go look at Joel's. Even in the Raptors series, in Game 7, they lose, and Joel doesn't have a box score, eye-popping box score. And it was in the 2 minutes he was out, they were a -11 in a shot that Kawhi Leonard hits him. So it's in the 2 minutes he was out, they couldn't survive. In that series, him on the court was a plus 90, off the court, they were a -100 and something. And you're going, okay, does that mean he's not playing in the playoffs, or does that mean that they just can't live without him? And so he's always felt like, I have to be on the court. I have to play high volume minutes. Otherwise, if I'm on the bench, we have no chance. And so this year he's more so just saying, hey, listen, he told me all the time, he's like, I need Tyrese to be an all-NBA player.
He's looking like it.
And so we
he probably is an all-NBA player.
100%.
So for the first half of the year.
And that's an interesting other take, because I know we're pivoting to now Maxey. I felt like I messed up last summer with Tyrese because the whole summer we prepared for him to be better in a two-man game with Joel. And it was all about how can you kind of be that second guy to Joel.
So you were doing movement off ball.
All we were doing is a lot of dribble handoffs. We were doing a lot of get games. We were doing a lot of high ball screens. We're basically doing how to even hit the ball, and Joel's getting doubled and he's pulling over for shots. We're doing all of how can you be a great number two? And then Joel didn't play last season, and they weren't able to win games. And Tyrese still had a good year. He was still at, I don't know what he had, 27 or 28 a game or whatever it was. But it was he wasn't able to carry his team to wins. And it was because he wasn't, in my opinion, prepared enough in my part we didn't train him to be the number one. And so this summer we said, hey, listen, Now that you've got those skills with Joel, if Joel comes back and is like what we hope he is, you still have those, but we need to turn you into kind of a more number one option. And so we shifted our focus in the summer and really focused on like, how do you thrive if Joel isn't on the court? And I think that's why you've seen some of the, first half improvement this season. And again, there's times where he's, the last couple of weeks I've been like, hey, just take a game off. You need a break. Like your body's fatiguing, and so that's another thing I think that the Sixers will have to do to ultimately be at their best is find ways to give him, sprinkle in breaks, a game off here or there, or, not as many high volume minutes there, here or there. But I do think that if all those guys are healthy, which is a big if, I know everybody, you're talking about that, a big if, but if all those guys are healthy, I think they do have a fair chance at winning the East.
I mean, I feel like, for me, growing up a Boston sports fan and growing up, and I born in 1990, and I hear about Red Sox, Curse of the Bambino, Patriots are the Patsies, and Celtics haven't won anything since the Bird era. And then boom, all these championships happen. There's like a piece of me that like when I watch a team like the Sixers, I'm like, oh, like it's horrible. Like so many like crash landing endings for the Sixers. There's a piece like young me, like thinking about those stories and those heartbreaks where it's like, well, things can turn around.
Yeah.
Like it can happen. I still think about those things. I think about it in regards to the Clippers. I think about it and that's not going to happen this year, obviously, with the Clippers, and I definitely think about it in regards to the Philadelphia 76ers. And with Philly this year, with Maxey and Embiid on the floor, they're a plus 8.4 net rating. With just Maxey on the floor without Embiid, they're only a minus 1.4. They don't become a minus 8. They don't become a minus 10. They're pretty average.
Yep.
But that's a lot better than it was in past years.
Of course.
To your point about where they were at one point in the Joel Embiid era. So I'm hopeful